It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You want me to play, huh? Is that what you want? I want you to be a hockey player. I am a hockey player.
The Worldwide Sports Radio Network presents Off the Post.
We suck. I'm not going to break it down for you. We suck.
With your host, Ashley Sarge.
Very much, Speedy. Good afternoon. Welcome to a happy Saturday. As we are here, the show is called Off the Post. We'll be streaming on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, Twitch. We also have an app as well, audio streamed on our website, which is www.worldwidesportsradio.com. We're also on iHeartRadio and the TuneIn Radio, so we hope you give us a listen. And on the guest list today, we will have Nick Kiprios, of course, former NHL player, played with the Washington Capitals, the Hartford Whalers, the New York Rangers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, spanning from 1986 to 1997. And in that span, he had 442 games, 46 goals, 44 assists for 90 points. But get this, 1,210 PIMs. You heard me right. And as a matter of fact, and we'll talk about it, he was a big goal scorer in junior hockey. And he has a book out that he'll talk about. It's called Undrafted. And we'll talk about what made him write the book, what's in the book, some of the things. So you can go get your copy. I've read some of it. It's pretty hilarious. He also was on Sportsnet and on Hockey Central for a number of years, and also Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada. And recently was let go there and is doing his own thing. We'll find out about that. That's Nick Kiprios in the first quarter show. The second call will be Paul Hendrick, now retired, former Toronto Maple Leafs TV host, Toronto Maple Leafs host. Also he filled in this year and did some play-by-play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Paul Hendrick will be in our second hour. Let's give kudos to Sidney Crosby. Sidney helped celebrate Hockey Fight Cancer Month, which is this month, the Pink and Pick Night. I've got a story about that in a second. Crosby brought Katie Dudas to PPG Paints Arena. She thought with many fans battling cancer. She was informed she was being honored, and Crosby gave her an autographed jersey, which is what Sidney's all about. Sidney's one of the biggest class acts in the league. And I remember covering a Islander Penguin playoff series, I think one of his first or second. And there was a scrum of reporters, and they're pushing and shoving, and everybody's trying to get space. So I'm getting Crosby's right, and they're all getting all banged up and pushing and shoving, and I'm ducking down low trying to get my microphone in there for some sound. And Crosby moves over and puts his hand and has me sit down next to him and put the microphone by his mouth so he can talk to me. So that's what kind of class act Sidney Crosby. Wayne Gretzky wouldn't do that. Mario Lemieux wouldn't do that. But Sidney Crosby definitely does that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Also, Tuukka Rask is coming back.
Hey.
He left. If you remember there, Speedy, do you remember?
Yeah, he left in the middle of the playoff tournament to go back to his family, kind of suddenly. It was right during the series against the Hurricanes, which they were able to pull that one off, but they missed him badly against Tampa Bay when they got smoked in that series in 5 games.
Yeah, according to Coach Bruce Cassidy, Tuukka Rask will be raring to go when the season gets started.
Yeah, you're not going to have a 2010 Jarro Halak try to do it again.
No. Halak is at the back 9 of his career, so surprised they got what they got out of him, but they got the best they could out of him. According to what Rask left Toronto for the Hub City and Eastern Conferences, as Speedy said, on August 15th because of the medical emergency with his daughter. And everything is under control now, and he will be back. And when they start the season, the rumors January 1st. Also, Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak remain on schedule after their off-season surgeries. Marchand had a full hernia surgery September 14th. Pasternak had right hip arthroscopic repair on September 16th. His recovery is supposed to take up to 5 to 6 months, which put him in line with middle of February, which would be the start of the regular season. They're supposed to start the 1st of January.
Yeah, no, he put it together an impressive season considering that. He was a Hart Trophy candidate for quite a while in that season, probably until that pandemic hit. So him doing that on that kind of season is definitely very impressive, considering he was playing hurt practically.
I have the divisions here. You're going to have Calgary, Vancouver, Edmonton, Montreal, Winnipeg, and Ottawa in the Canadian division. Then they're going to have a division of the Islanders, Rangers, Devils, Capitals, Sabres, Flyers, Bruins, Penguins. Then they're going to have 4 divisions. Then they're going to have Lightning, Blue Jackets, Wild, Panthers, Predators, Blackhawks, Wild, and Red Wings. And then they're going to have Avalanche, Knights, Blues, Kings, Stars, Sharks, Ducks, Coyotes.
That's an interesting one with the Wild, Red Wings, Panthers, Predators. That's a lot of travel for those teams in particular.
Well, what they're going to do is they're not going to travel that much. They're going to be like baseball. They're going to play like 2 or 3 games in a week.
Oh, okay. Place. Yeah, all right. That's interesting.
And then we're going to have a short.
That's it.
They're going to have a shortened schedule. Mm-hmm. I would say anywhere from, I'm going to ask Nicky if he knows when he gets to us.
He's ready. He's ready to go whenever you are.
Our guest, Nick Kiprios. The book is called Undrafted, former NHL player, former TV broadcaster, now doing something called The Real Kid. Tell me he's walking away now.
That is a cool background, though. Real Kuiper in the background. I like that.
Yeah, that's his. I guess it's his podcast. We'll ask him about it in a second.
Yeah, he's got a very nice setup. I'm impressed for sure.
Well, tell me about this. What you got going on now with this Real Kipper? Look at this, the Stanley Cup. Look at this. Move the book next to the mic. Take the book. Take the book.
I got the book right here, bud. I got
it. There you go. That's it. There you go. That's it. That's what we're talking about. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
How's the pandemic? Welcome to our show here, the Off the Post on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We're glad I'm having you. I hope people are chiming in. So tell me about your setup first. What you got going on? What's Real Kipper?
Real Kipper's a YouTube channel that we started with the return to play. So myself and Doug McLean, of course, all these years we were up here on Sportsnet. We had a radio show called Hockey Central at noon, and we've decided to take it digitally. So, of course, after 21 years at Sportsnet, I did not renew my contract. Things have changed as far as the climate in the industry. I thought it was a good time to take a break and maybe reevaluate. And everything was pointing in the direction of podcasts and YouTube channels, and that's where Real Kipper was born.
Great stuff. Oh, by the way, I don't watch the Hockey Central anymore since you, Doug, and since you guys got it. It's so bad now with Stewart and those other and Jeff Merrick. You gave Jeff Merrick a few lessons, but anyways.
Well, listen, they're good guys. They're trying hard,
but it's not the same.
Well, nothing's ever really the same, right?
No.
But you know what? People got to move on. Life's always about changes, and that's where we are today. We're part of a Canadian company, i3 Interactive. It's an online gaming company that wanted content. We're on linemovement.com if you're looking for it. And the online gaming is blitzbet.eu. So it just seemed with Gary Bettman's decision to start using names and likeness of NHL players and teams that it was going to go towards mainstream media and with the online gambling. So that's where Real Kipper at noon and linemovement.com was born.
Congratulations. All right. What inspired you to write the book?
I thought it was a good time, Ashley, just in terms of kind of reevaluate 12 years of professional hockey, 3.5 in junior A hockey, growing up in Canada. I won a Calder Cup with the Hershey Bears in 1988. I won a championship, of course, with the New York Rangers in 94. And then the transition from hockey to broadcasting over 20 years, many rocky roads in the last 35 years. And I just wanted to maybe inspire a few people to say it's not how many times you fall, but how many times you get up. And there was ample examples of that in my book. And I wanted to pass it on to people to say that there's many different ways to get to the same destination. So I hope some players out there, some future players, will understand that, we're not all lucky enough to be Connor McDavid's or Sidney Crosby's, where you're the best player on every team that you played on since you were 7 years old. That, there are some players that at times it didn't look like they were destined to play in the NHL, yet you still found a way. That's what I hope the book inspires.
When you were playing, did you ever think you'd get into my business or our business when you were playing, or you thought, did you have any idea? Were you thinking about the future? Because I know the kids today, and I want you to comment on this. Kids today don't really, I think, the millennials don't really think about their futures. Well, all of them at the lower. I'm telling you, what I've come across, I don't think they think about their futures. You want to comment?
Well, I would say that if you're talking about broadcasting, it's only because they have too much money and they don't have to work like I did, building something up. I didn't have enough money to retire. I had certainly a great nest egg, and it gave me a great start in life. But I had to really work hard to establish a second career. Maybe the players today might be in a different position where they can pick and choose a little bit more and be their own bosses. Of course, when you go into the corporate world of broadcasting, you're ultimately never your own boss. You've got producers, you've got directors, you got camera people always telling you what to do, where to stand, and sometimes they try to tell you what to say. And I like the freedom of Real Kipper at noon here, where I build my own studio. I'm my own boss. I get to say whatever the hell I want, and it's all good.
Now, you were not drafted. You walked in to Washington. What was that first training camp like, and how did you turn heads?
Well, I didn't have a good year. The first year of eligibility of my draft, I think I had 12 goals, and I was fortunate enough just prior to playing my first NHL game with the Washington Capitals, I signed my first professional contract actually with the Philadelphia Flyers and remained in that organization for a few years. And at times it didn't look very good that I'd ever get a chance to play my first NHL game. Took a lot of knocks, including a couple of big injuries that one told me that would end my career. And that was a complete reconstruction of my right knee. But I had good people around me. I had good doctors around me. I had Pat Croce, who was a physical therapist with the Philadelphia Flyers. And of course went on to do great things with ownership of the 76ers and the NBA. I had Tim Kerr. Tim Kerr took me under his wing and really gave me a chance to understand what pro hockey is all about and try to document that best I could in the book.
Talk about, now you won the Calder Cup 87-88 with the Hershey Bears, of course the Stanley Cup with the Rangers 93-94. Now, when you went to the Flyers, did they have the edict that you have to be the quote unquote, let's say the ruffian, the goon, the sandpaper guy?
Well, it kind of evolved for me, and it wasn't definitively the Philadelphia Flyers or the Washington Capitals that said that, I was one of the top goal scorers in junior history.
62 goals,
62
35
goals.
assists, 97 points one year.
Yeah, I had a lot of goals. I think I still sit in the top 20 in all-time junior A goal scorers. So I knew at the time that they weren't very patient people in the NHL, whether it's the Philadelphia Flyers or the Washington Capitals. They want, if you're a goal scorer, you score goals right away, or they're going to find someone else that can. And when I started reading the tea leaves that maybe I couldn't score at the rate that I did in junior, I wanted to find a different way to stay and contribute. And that meant being more physical. That meant dropping your gloves at times, but it always meant being a great teammate. And I made that adjustment on my own.
Did you go out looking for it right away? Like I said before, do you have many fights in that first training camp with Hershey, or in that first year?
Oh, no, that was a given. It was you had to show your stuff right away, and even the goal scorers felt that they needed to get involved right away. The young junior goal scorers. So, there was a great rivalry between the Philadelphia Flyer rookies and the Washington Capitol rookies, and if that exhibition game didn't last longer than 4 hours, something was seriously wrong.
Yeah, you can't get with that today. Okay, you went from the Hershey Bears, then you went to the Baltimore Skip Shacks. What was that experience like?
Well, it was a bit of a transition period because Brian Murray had just got fired and got replaced by his brother, Terry Murray. Can you recall hearing anything more goofy than a brother replacing a brother as a head coach in the NHL? It was a complete one-off. My good friend Doug McLean, who's a regular contributor here on the Real Kipper at Noon show, ended up going down to Baltimore as the head coach. I went down there to kind of get my confidence back. I also had surgery on my right knee to replace some staples. And I was just down there long enough to kind of gain my confidence back, but even establish a good relationship with Doug McLean. And both of us, we haven't looked back. Of course, he spent over 10 years with me at Sportsnet and now hanging out with me on my YouTube channel. So it was a great experience. And again, every player wishes that he could just step out of junior and have a long career, not even see the minors or the American Hockey League. But it certainly led to my growth as a player and a person, my time in the American Hockey League.
Is the American Hockey League different from when you played to today?
Well, I think the whole game's evolved, and we don't necessarily actually see the fights that we saw before. There's not anywhere near the pressure of the players to drop their gloves. I think on average now we probably see over 65, maybe close to 70% of all NHL games now be fight free. So it's kind of evolved naturally, which is great. But certain players, they've spoken loud and clear. They still want it in their game. And it's there for them if they feel like they need to do it. But it's night and day from where we were 15, 20 years ago.
But do you think that does the sticks now come up too much cheap shot stuff going on nowadays?
No, there's some
nobody being accountable. Wait, I'm not finished. Nobody being accountable for what they do on the ice. Yeah. Like a guy like Ken Linsman would thrive today.
Yeah, there's at times you wish that players held more players accountable, but for the most part, I think a lot of it's been cleaned up. I think that the skill level is now higher than it's ever been before. And, at times, it can be a little boring, 3 games.
Yeah, knock it in, knock it out, knock it in, right? Knock it out.
And you wish that they had a little bit more in terms of keeping players on the edge a little bit, but it is what it is. For the most part, the skill is what people want to see the most, and it's never been better. So, yeah, there's at times I wish that certain guys wouldn't get away with what they're getting away with, but I think for the most part, it's still a very entertaining game.
Yeah, I want to give you, for instance, the baseball does not allow aluminum bats. They still have wooden bats. Baseball, they won't allow it. Hockey, we had wooden sticks for umpteen years.
Yeah.
Now we have aluminum sticks, the whips that they are. Do you think that the NHL could have done something to prevent this from going on, or not? Or they just didn't care?
Well, you can't stop the advancement of technology, and the sticks are better than they've ever been before. The players love them. They shoot harder with them. The flex, the ability to, and we've seen Ovechkin on those one-timers and how much of a bend that his stick has, and could never do that with a wooden stick. Sometimes they break a little bit too easily for our liking, but that's the trade-off for still watching Ovechkin go top shelf from 40, 50 feet out. But for the most part, like I said, the stick work isn't nearly as bad as it was in my era. The fighting isn't nearly as often in my era. I think for the most part, even concussions, when we see a concussion today, Ashley, it happens to be more of a incidental contact than it is getting punched in the head or getting a cheap shot. So I think for the most part, the game has really evolved, in the direction that people would like it to.
You have your first NHL game with the Capitals. What's the first night like for you? Walking in, what was did you do the morning skate? Were you nervous? Run me through it.
Well, I just got claimed off of waivers, and before I could even catch my breath, I'm playing against the Philadelphia Flyers, an organization that I knew very well and spent all my time with those guys. So that was a very difficult, I wrote it in the book, it was a very, very difficult first NHL game to have when I really dreamed of playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, not the Washington Capitals. But nonetheless, that's what your dream is all about, is putting the uniform on for the first time. And at the end of the day, I grew up a Leaf fan, didn't get a chance to play for the Leafs till much later in my career, but didn't really matter what the crest was. But those three little initials, NHL, that's the one that you really cared about. It was a huge thrill, not only for me, but my whole family.
What was the first game like? What was it first when you walked?
Yeah.
When you walked in, you sat down.
Yeah.
You sat by your stall.
Yeah.
You sat in your stall. You put your stuff on. What was that? What was going through your mind? What can you remember?
Well, you just stare at the jersey with your nameplate on the back and number 9. And I talk a lot about my number 9 in my book and how it is the hockey number that everybody grew up with, especially with Rocket Richard, Gordie Howe, right? Bobby Hull. And now I've got an NHL number 9 with my nameplate. I couldn't stop staring at it. It was so surreal at that time. But it was a huge thrill to be in the Cap Center playing my first NHL game.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but all the number 9, all the original 6, all the number 9s are retired. I don't know if you know that. If you look,
it's a hard number. It's a hard number to get a hold of these days. That's for sure.
Yeah, he has it in Washington. The defenseman, and I can't remember the Russian defenseman.
Is it Orlov?
Yeah, Orlov. Orlov has 9 in Washington. There you go. See, I'm getting a little slow here in the old age. Where's the book? Got to put the book next to the next. There you go. There you go. The book is Undrafted. It's Nick Kiprios. I urge you to go out and get it and read it. Okay. How long did it take you? Now, they talk about the game very fast. Even in your day, the game was pretty fast, the hard hitting. How long did it take you to sort of slow down and become comfortable to really, really know yourself? How long did it take?
I think, you want to get that rookie season out of the way. Prior to that, everything's so new. Travel's new. Cities that you go to that you've watched countless times on TV, but to get to know buildings, from Buffalo's Auditorium to the Boston Garden, like all those, just a huge thrill to go back to the Montreal Forum, a rink that you remembered growing up with the great Montreal Canadian teams, the incredible Canada or Montreal Canadian Russia game on New Year's Eve. I mean, Canada Cups, just a huge thrill in your first year. It's almost as if it was like an out-of-body experience. By the time you get into your second and third year, Ashley, now you're starting to realize it's a job. And like any other job, when you're at the highest level, you don't perform, you don't get to stay. So all of that tinsel starts wearing down pretty quickly as soon as you understand that somebody else wants your job pretty quickly. You better not lose it.
And then you get traded to the Hartford Whalers, team that doesn't exist anymore. You played in the shopping mall there. What was that like for you going to Hartford?
I enjoyed it. Again, getting an opportunity to play in the NHL. Of course, it was a bit of a trying time in that organization because they just traded Ronnie Francis and Ulf Samuelsson and all these favorites. And it's a small community in Connecticut. It's not a big metropolitan city where no matter how bad you're going to be, there's going to be 18,000 fans in the building. That was not Hartford at that point. So we had our work cut out for us. We had a tough team and at times an entertaining team, but we just didn't win. But it just didn't seem like we were ever going to be embraced with that owner who traded away all their favorite players. And, you know, it was hard. It was hard on the players that remained when those fans, half of them didn't show up.
You had the most penalty minutes that year, 320. That was the height of your career that year, 325.
Yeah, I wrote in the book that the only reason that happened is because Brian Burke was our general manager at the time, and he gave away a free truck to the guy that hit the most in every game. So anything that moved, I try to run over. I ended up getting in the penalty box a little too many times.
Was that your mantra? Hit anything that moved when you came up from Philadelphia to Washington to Hartford? Was that sort of like anything that had a dark jersey at the time, or a white jersey that you would hit?
I think it was pretty clear early that I was just not going to be able to score like I could, but I can certainly hit. I knew I was a physical player even in junior. I didn't mind it every once in a while. I didn't do it very often, but I know I could do it if I needed to. And once I kind of fell into that role a little bit, you know, Brian Murray really encouraged me. And ultimately, you know, the rest of the coaches knew that I could add an element. I was also fortunate to score 17 goals, and I was pushing hard to be one of the few players in NHL history to score 20 goals and have over 300 penalty minutes. There's only a handful of those guys, you know, including my head coach, I think Paul Holmgren. But I pulled my abdominal muscles and missed the last, I think, 7 or 8 games of the regular season. I would have really liked to have scored 20 goals that year.
What was Homer like as a coach? Is he easygoing? Is he?
No, there's nothing easygoing about Paul Holmgren. You saw him play.
I did see him play.
As intense as there is.
Stand in front of that net, boy. He'd stand in front of that net and wouldn't move. Like Jim Kerr.
You're gonna enjoy a good story in the book about how we almost fought in a parking lot on a road trip one night, just based on our foolishness of you know, our egos, I guess. That would have been a bad mistake on my part, fighting my head coach.
Yeah, they would have shipped you out. They did anyways. They shipped it out to the New York Rangers. Spent 3 anyway. Talk about. Let's go back to Washington. Talk about your first goal. What you remember about it?
Joe Louis Arena with the late Doug Wickenheiser as my centerman, and Alan May, who's now broadcasting for Washington Capital games on NBC Sports in Washington. And Sammy St. Louis was
the goalie.
Yeah, the goalie, but it's not St. Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Sam St. Laurent.
Saint Laurent. Thank you very much. See what happens?
Yeah. Well, I know. So we're tied at 1 now. We tied at 1. We each could remember a player or a situation. So we're tied at 1 now.
Now you guys are going to a shootout.
It took a while, though. I think I was 14, 15 games into the regular season before I scored my first NHL goal, but huge monkey off my back. My parents were in the arena. They made the trip from Toronto. So every kid's dream, score their first NHL goal.
Did your mother say anything about your fighting acumen?
Yeah, I talk a lot.
Did she not close her eyes or not want to see what you were doing?
I talk a lot about that in the book. And, you know, a couple times she actually said, you know, are you sure that you want to go down this path? And, you know, maybe we should stop. I got bounced around a few times out of junior, from Kitchener to Mississauga to North Bay. Every time I fought as a 17-year-old, I got beat up bad, really bad. And she didn't like it at all, but just wanted to keep going, wanted to fulfill my dream of being on a hockey card one day. And, you know.
You have it?
Oh, I got a few of the rookie cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was not in game with you playing that physical brand of style.
You know what? She was okay. She's very tough in her own right, and I talk a lot about her and what she's made out of. But they were always very supportive, very encouraging in terms of to stick with it. But at times they were as frustrated as I was, but we found a way to persevere.
All right, then you get traded to the New York Rangers. Want some toughness? They're going to go for the Stanley Cup, and they trade for Nick Kiprios.
Yeah, that was.
What was it like going from Hartford, New York, and where you can get lost?
From the outhouse to the penthouse. That's what it felt like in terms of going from a bottom feeding team to Broadway, and it was abundantly clear that they missed the playoffs the year before. They made a major change in getting Mike Keenan, and it was all about 1994. They went out there, they loaded up. You take a look at our Black Aces at the time: Doug Lidster, Ed Olczyk, myself, Glenn Healy, came from more prominent roles with other teams. Yet it was all about that 1 year and loading up insurance pieces as well. So it's a great thrill to be a small piece to a very big jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I have good mining stories. I knew he was out of control.
So I'm a Ranger fan, Nick. So that was definitely a cool experience. I wasn't alive to see '94, unfortunately. I'm a little young, but it was definitely something my parents and grandparents embraced.
You're gonna really enjoy my book then, because it'll take you right there at that time and the things that went on and how Keenan challenged a lot of players. I talk about.
I'm here.
Hey, Ash. Keenan just had to challenge guys, and some guys he left alone. Myself, Joey Kosher, he knew what he could squeeze out of us. But as far as other players, skilled players like Zubov and Brian Leach, he had to push their buttons. At times, it was tough to watch. But when it's all said and done, you win the Stanley Cup. Nobody can complain. Nobody can say it didn't work.
You spent 3 years with the Rangers. They fired Keenan, or he left, or whatever went on with that nonsense. You had Coley Campbell come in. What was that change like for you guys?
Well, it's like anything else. Sometimes you feel like, half the team's happy, half few guys are sad, and there's many in between. It's really hard when you look back at it. There's no definitive way to sit there and say, this is great for me or this is bad for me. You're just going to have to see the way it plays out. But I enjoyed the next year playing for Coley Campbell, and I think we had some success. I got a chance to play with Nemchinov and Alex Kovalev during our Stanley Cup run through Quebec Nordiques. We bumped them off. We just snuck in the playoffs. Of course, we're talking about a shortened season because of the lockout in 1995. But I enjoyed it, and I thought we had a really good team. But
I was going to ask you about that. What was that like?
I thought when we beat the Quebec Nordiques, were ranked.
I was going to ask you, after you finished that, I was going to ask you about the lockout, what that was like, that first lockout for you guys. What that experience was like.
It was again. It was unfortunate that after winning the Stanley Cup, you had to wait so long to raise the banner. That number one was a little tough, but we knew at that point we were prepared for it because we had a players association that was very well prepared in terms of knowing what the challenges were, the dynamics of the business side of it. I ended up going to, I think, Mexico with Mike Hudson and Brian Noonan. So I don't think we were panicking at the time. But the hardest part was waiting to raise the banner.
I wanted to ask you this because we actually interviewed mine and Errol's show, who's the president of our network, Down to the Wire. We actually interviewed Rob Ray, who was another big, one of those big fighter guys like that. So if you ever had any experiences with him, and if so, what were they like?
I did, yeah. I had one or two. I think at the time we were both kind of coming up at the same time in the American Hockey League. He was with Rochester and Buffalo, of course, at the time. But for the most part, I look at Rob Ray and I look at others, and they're truly heavyweights. And I look at how long they did it in their career and a number of penalty minutes that they had. And I just didn't have the ability to sustain that type of career for that long. So I maxed out at a 12-year pro career. I got out fairly early. Hopefully I'm a little better for it in the wear and tear department. Some days, are a little tougher than others, but for the most part, I think I got out early enough. But Rob Ray's a true heavyweight, one of the toughest guys in the history of the game. And I tip my hat off to him and Ty Domi and, the late Bob Probert and these guys who truly went out there and put it all on the line every night for their team.
I like that background, though. That is very cool with all the pucks, all the different
you know what?
pucks.
I was able to kind of take my time a little bit, and I wanted to do it right here. And it's amazing now. I spent 20 years with a corporate organization like Sportsnet, where, you're millions of dollars into sets and cameras and lights and directors and producers, and now you can all do that from a fraction of the cost out of your own home and be able to get out to as many people that want to watch all over the world. It was quite a great process of learning about the industry in terms of where it's heading and how I could be a small part of it. So it was a great experience building this set.
What do you think about the NHL players going to the Olympics?
I think it's the right thing. I think it has been the right thing all along since 1998. It was about growing the game. We know that when it comes to international competition, the biggest is the Olympics. I thought it was a step back, taking it away for the last little while. I know they want to build a World Cup, much like a World Cup in soccer, but it'll never have the cachet of the Olympics. Connor McDavid said it best when they took it away from him, how bitterly disappointed he was. Players want to be on the best stage against the best players. That's what the Olympics does.
Yeah, but you interrupt the season for a month, for 4 weeks. And what about the other? There's only X amount of guys go. What about the rest of the guys? They sit around and do nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's right in the middle of that.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but you ask me what people want. They're not thinking about, that's a union problem. That's, make the team and you don't have to sit around for 3 weeks, right? I'm just saying from a pure...
Guys like you.
I'm not saying your angle's not valid. It's valid, and I don't have the answer to that. But I will tell you from sheer experience in covering the Olympics in 2010 as one of the broadcasters on CTV and being 10 feet away from Sidney Crosby's golden goal, that's regarded as one of the greatest moments in Canadian history. So I think from a sheer perspective of what the fans want, they want the Olympics. But they're going to have to figure out a way where it kind of suits everybody, I guess. But, yes, it's got its issues, like shutting down for 3 weeks, players not playing. All of that's valid, but for the most part, people want it.
Okay, last question about wanting it. Why does the NHL have such a tough time selling in the U.S.?
Well, I don't know whether or not if that's just a fair comment. It's prior to the pandemic, it was a $4.5 billion industry. So it's selling somewhere. Now, it's nowhere near basketball, baseball, or football, but I think it's made strides. The only question is now, we're going to expand to 32 teams with Seattle. You want to make an argument that there's too many teams, that could be valid, that we're just saturated a little bit too much, but didn't stop Seattle from paying $650 million for a franchise either. So I think, being a winter sport in the U.S. still has some challenges at times in southern parts of the U.S., but it has grown in California. It has grown in Texas. It's grown in Florida, maybe not to the level that people would like, but it's bigger than it's ever been before.
When do we start hockey again?
if NBA is going just before Christmas, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the NHL to start January 1st. So what it looks like, we're still not sure. But I think they're going to be under a lot of pressure to get this thing going again January. They got to finish before the Olympics starts in the summer. I don't think the networks want hockey in the summer. The ratings didn't do very well at all up here for Sportsnet. They've made it abundantly clear that they don't want hockey broadcasts in the summer. So they're going to have to start in January and end it right around the middle of June.
Book is Undrafted. What else you got? You want to show me? Yeah, I see that. What is it?
I started a new cocktail company with my wife. It's called Little Buddha. It's grilled pineapple.
Do we get some? Can I get to try it? You want to send me down some so we can try it?
I know. I got to do that. The only problem is we're having trouble at the border a little bit, but as soon as we start selling in the U.S., I'll make sure you get it first.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Really
A little bit trouble at the border. It's a lot of trouble at the border. They're going to have a Canadian division. I was going to ask you about the Canadian division. Nick, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I'd like to have you on again sometime down the road. Great stuff.
Take care, man.
Great stuff. Great book. Undrafted. Thanks, Nicky. Appreciate it. That's Nick Kiprios, former New York Ranger, former Toronto Maple Leaf. There we go.
Hey,
hi, Paul.
how are you, Ashley?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Not bad,
Welcome
thank
to the Off the Post. Sorry, I took a little long there with Nick Kiprios. It's a Toronto section night as we're on the Worldwide Sports Network. It's called Off the Post. How are you?
Good, man. How was Nick?
Nick was great, like always.
Yeah.
Nick is great, like
He's
always. Always.
pumping a book.
So you decided to. He's pumping a book, Undrafted. You'll probably have a book in a couple of years too. I bet you know you'll have one too. You've got a lot of good stories there from the Leafs and whatever. So what made you decide to give up and retire now from Leafs TV?
Well, just to spend a
Can you hear
little
me?
more time with my wife Alicia and take advantage of health and all of these things, Ashley, and get away from the grind a little bit after 41 years. And so we didn't know when I was thinking about this decision that COVID would kick in, but it has. And now here we are, and there's still no hockey. I'm doing a podcast right now, which is a lot of fun, but a lot of work, as you know. And it's keeping me active, and it's allowing me to read a whole bunch of books that I normally wouldn't get a chance to read. So all in all, still enjoying it and getting a chance to still talk with you and people like you from time to time, which is keeping me fun, happy, and busy.
Talk about the podcast. When can people catch it? And just like Kipper's got his every day at noon, when can we find your podcast?
Well, it's called The First Question
Can you-
because I usually ended up with the first question in these Maple Leaf scrums over the last 20 years. It's sponsored by a company, a board game company called Ballistic Sports, BILIZTIK. It's just out, and it's to bring, I guess, attention toward their product. They put it together. I give it to them. They put it together, and it's on all the various social media platforms. But you would go to Ballistic Sports, just pump in my name or The First Question, and away you go. I've got about a dozen already shot. We've got Ken Dryden coming on this week, Brian Burke last week. And so these are all exciting guests. Luke Shen, Stanley Cup champion, Tyler Bozak, former Stanley Cup champion, Darcy Tucker, looking to get Doug Gilmour on shortly as well. So all a great deal of fun.
Let's talk about the Leafs. They signed. Do you think the Joe Thornton signing was a good signing for them? And do you think there'll be a lot more pressure when we start hockey?
I think Joe's handled enough pressure. I think this is just gravy for him. He gets an opportunity at the Cup, one last opportunity, I think, with a really good hockey club that's starting to mature. As far as Joe's position, Ashley, he's going to help out the younger guys. In fact, he's going to help out JT, John Tavares, who is always going to be there to answer the call after a game win or lose. But I know the other guys, Austin, Willie, Mitch, not exactly as comfortable as they'd like to. They'd certainly always be there for the club, but having somebody like Joe, Wayne Simmons, a few other veterans, Spets, of course, all a part of it, I think it just shares the leadership in that room. And Joe's been around for such a long time. He's the oldest forward in the National Hockey League now, playing for $700,000. This is all about getting a chance to win a cup. So I think he's going to be motivated in that regard. But I think the extra wisdom and leadership that he brings to help complement what JT brings is only going to be good for the rest of the club. And guaranteed, Austin, Mitch, and William are going to be happy to let those guys do a little more talking compared to what they've done, especially Austin, who's always been there as well. William, not so much, but he's going to have to do less now, which he's going to be very, very happy about.
What have you heard as far as them starting? Are they going to start in January? I mean, I had a Board of Governors meeting. What did you take out of the Governors Board meeting? What about this Canadian division? How's that going to work? And how are they going to work the playoffs then?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the Canadian division is a distinct reality. We certainly historically have been better in the last 7 months than our American neighbors in regards to COVID. That said, we are in the midst of a second wave as well. The number's certainly not as big as what we're getting stateside. We're a tenth of the population, however. However, in our big cities where the density is pretty comparable, we've done a decent job. So I see the Canadian division happening. I see the season maybe starting sometime in January. I could see probably 54 games. We don't want this thing to go deep into the summer. As is, it's going to probably go into mid-July. That's late enough, I think, for everyone involved. I can see a Canadian champion emerging and then playing off against the variety of other hubs that would come out of the United States, and you go from there with another altered form of playoff before we can get this virus under control and back to where we once had it with our regular divisions and conferences and all that went with it. But that's not going to happen this winter. Yes, a Canadian division is a reality, and it's easy. No one has to cross borders.
Talk about your different guests that you've had. You've had Dryden. You're going to have Dryden. Talk about what they've brought and what you've learned from the guests in your podcasts.
Well, the first one we shot and we thought we were going to get to use the very next day was Rick Vive. He's got a book that's coming out next week. And Rick called and said, hey, no, I forgot. You can't run it until mid-November. My publisher is going to have my head. So we've put that on hold. But it's going to be an interesting read. And just the family he grew up with, the pressure in terms of things not being quite so comfortable at home with his mom and dad, especially his dad, and leaving home to play hockey in Sherbrooke and then eventually down to Birmingham and then up to Vancouver. So these podcasts have really delved into books. I'm reading Ken's book, Scotty, of course, and Scotty Bowman. If you haven't read it, Ashley, it's just outstanding. So many great stories and written so well as only Kenny can write it. I've read Doug Gilmore's book. We're going to have Doug coming on as well, his story. Dan Robson, a tremendous young journalist who's written 5 books, including one on Pat Quinn. So we got into Pat. Sammy Jo Small, a backup goaltender for those great Canadian women's Olympic teams, and talking about her perspective and the rivalry, I think, which is the greatest rivalry in hockey, Canada, USA, women's hockey. I can't wait for every Olympic final. So it's allowed us just to get into that and touch base with some good friends from the past. Tyler Bozak, Stanley Cup champion. Luke Shen, Stanley Cup champion. Both outstanding people. I've got Dave Bolin coming on as well, 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's just an opportunity to sit back for 40 minutes and tell some stories and find out a few things that I thought I knew, but I did not know. And these players and authors, certainly in a comfortable environment, have been more than willing to tell their fair share. So, and Scott Driscoll, former NHL linesman, 28 years, we share a mutual passion for World War II history. But, the story in him being a walk-on at Pat Quinn's Vancouver Canucks, fighting Gino Ojic, Pat giving him bloody hell during a game, and Scott coming up to him saying, you're the reason I'm a linesman in the National Hockey League. You cut me. So it's that kind of thing So that part's enjoyable, but the work to get prepared, and especially this upcoming podcast with Ken Dryden, it has overwhelmed and over-encompassed what I've been doing in terms of my preparation, and then whittling down an 800-page book in my Kobo reader into about 25 pages of legible questions to engage Ken in a conversation I'm looking forward to.
I know why your daughter became a lawyer. I could see where she got it from.
Oh,
anyways, his daughter's a lawyer.
My brain power is nowhere near what my daughter's is. She may have got some of the passion, but what's between the years, she's so far ahead of where I'm at. We might joke about it, but it's the truth.
Okay. What do you think what do you think the Leafs need to get themselves to that second level? And how's the new coach, the guy that took over for last year?
Sheldon Keefe. Yeah.
Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah, here's the deal. The core of this team: Matthews, Marner, Nylander. Now this is their and Hyman. I can throw that player in there as well. This will be their 5th year together. They've made the postseason 4 consecutive years. And you've got to lose and you've got to learn before you can take that next step. Now you throw John Tavares in. He's been here for a couple of years. I think this core is ready to take that next leap. Add Thornton, Simmons, that kind of leadership. Alex Barbanov, who's coming over from Russia, we'll see if he's able to make the starting grade, but I think he's going to be able to. But I think more importantly, actually, is where they got better on defense. With all due respect to Cody Ceci and Tyson Barrie, wrong places, wrong time, both very good people, both good defensemen. I think they're both going to flourish in their cities next season. Much more so than they did in Toronto. But TJ Brody comes on. He'll complement Morgan Riley. And then what I really like is Mikko Lehtinen, the reigning KHL defenseman of the year. I think he's going to have a tremendous season and adapt to North America quickly. They've got more depth, and Zach Bogosian as well. They've got more depth, and they're tougher. And I think this is all going to help out as they get ready for what I think will be a 54-game season. And the depth comes in Travis Dermott and a pair of former first-rounders in Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. This is depth the club hasn't had. The only knock, I think, in this entire group, there's only 2 right-handed shots amongst them. That's Justin Hall and Zach Bogosian. Hall last year, right side defense, top pairing. He's a good defenseman, but that's not where he should be. I think he's placed properly, and they've got a healthy Jake Muzzin coming back. So I think they're going to be tougher, and they've got more depth on the blue line. That's going to make everybody better, and we'll see how healthy they can stay. But I think this team's ready to win a series, and then we'll go from there. And Frederick Anderson, he's in the last year of his contract. He's got plenty to prove. And I think he's going to get an opportunity to do that. This is a big money-making season for him. He's got a better team in front of him, especially on the blue line. So I think as optimistic as I always am, I think I'm legitimately optimistic in what will be an airtight season. But for Canada, it's just going to be like old school days. It's just going to be all Canada all the time for the media, just one anthem to listen to. And that'll be kind of enjoyable in its own right. They drop the puck maybe a minute and a half sooner than they normally would. But it's going to be an interesting run, and we'll see where it all comes out of. I think of all these Canadian teams, Toronto would have to rank at or pretty near the top of where this group is, so maybe a chance to get out of this division and then try their luck with some of those great American-based clubs as the summer progresses in 2021.
What do you think about Montreal? I think Montreal is a significantly better team this year than they were, signing having Allen and Edmondson and Toffoli.
Yeah, they're better, and I like Tyler Toffoli. He's going to enjoy playing in Montreal and getting a chance to come home to play in Toronto, something he didn't get to do often when a member of the Los Angeles Kings. Of course, they're going to be better, and they're going to be better right from the get-go, actually, because of who they got in nets in Carey Price. So it'll be tighter. Ottawa's going to be much better. They're still a few years away, but they've got a heck of a farm system. And although they're going to be near the bottom of this group, I think they're still going to be much better. And you look across the country with Vancouver and what they were able to do last spring. and the two Alberta-based teams, and Winnipeg. Winnipeg's another club. We'll see what their window is like, but they were decimated by injuries last season and really never got off the mat because of it. So everybody's had a chance to stay healthy, and I see Toronto at the top of this group. And I see them at the top of this group because they're better defensively, as I've mentioned. And I like what Frederick Anderson, with that big carrot being dangled in front of him, UFA at season's end. And this is a chance for him to prove himself. But get back to your original question. Montreal's going to be competitive, and they'll be somewhere in the top 4 of that mix up here in Canada.
Very controversial from the Leafs' perspective to fire Mike Babcock when they did and bring in Sheldon Keefe as their new coach. What were your thoughts to that?
Yeah, to answer both of you guys in terms of the dismissal of Mike, and here we are in November. That was just about a year ago, and I remember coming in off that trip. We were in Arizona and practicing in Scottsdale, and Mike comes out after the skate at the Coyotes practice facility and talks to us and joking and all of these other things. And then I'm in a Uber with the voice of the team, Joe Bone, heading back to our hotel when I get a text that Mike has been fired, and we're both looking at each other and going, "What?" So back to the hotel, got changed, and then out to another part of Phoenix in the greater Scottsdale area to meet with Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas and to get the word. We were surprised. As far as maybe the team was, maybe not. Maybe they were looking big picture that they had to get something done and done soon to get back into playoff contention. The club was really just treading water. And interesting enough, a night later in Arizona, and Tyson Barrie scores his first goal of the season, literally got the monkey off his back. I think a lot of the guys were just a little more relieved that this had been done. And then the getting to know Sheldon Keefe acclamation party had officially begun. Well, both sides know each other, and every coach is hired to be fired. There's a shelf life for all. Mike is one of the greatest coaches of all time. You just look down his resume. But I think he had gone as far as he could go with this team. I'm not saying they stopped playing for him, but on certain nights, especially a couple of games last year, and one specifically in Pittsburgh, where the Leafs have their backup goaltender in nets, Kazimir Kaskasuo, if I recall correctly, and there was just no suitable effort put in front of him on a night where these guys should have been diving left and right and working as hard as they could have done to block shots and do all they did, much like Carolina did with David Ayres when the top 2 goalies go down for that club in Mrazek and Reimer, and a Zamboni driver from and the practice goalie with the Toronto Marlies has to come in. All he saw were 9 shots through the rest of that game. The Leafs didn't provide that kind of effort for Kazimir Kaskasuo in Pittsburgh. And I just think, Ashley, that a change had to be made. It was made, and onward we move. And I no doubt that Mike is going to end up somewhere coaching a hockey club, and he's going to be great for that club. But his time was done in Toronto, and a couple of those games kind of put an exclamation mark on that sentiment.
I'm not so sure. Not yet, anyways. Paul, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. I really like to have you on again somewhere down the road with this with our little podcast here. Thank you, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, Ashley, thank you.
Paul Hendrick, catch his podcast. You can catch him on the podcast there. His brand new interview, very interesting. Don't let me, Speedy.
Barely.
Well, that does it for another hockey show. Next week, Doug Sotart, and I'm going to be sitting in that chair, I think, next week, next to Speedy. Doug Sotart and Mark Spector will be our guests. I'm Ashley Sarge. Don't forget to tune us in every Saturday, 4 to 5 p.m. Have yourself a great hockey night. That does it for us. Have yourself a great hockey night.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.